Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 60 of SQL Server video series. In this video, we will discuss about correlated subqueries in SQL Server. In part 59 of this video series, we have discussed the basic of subqueries in SQL Server. We also discussed about how subqueries can be replaced using joins. If you have not watched that, I would strongly encourage you to do so before continuing with this session. In this session, we will discuss about correlated subqueries. Correlated subqueries are very simple and easy to understand. Now, if the subquery depends on the outer query for its values, then that subquery is called as correlated subquery. Let's look at an example. Let's flip to SQL Server Management Studio. Now, before we look at a correlated subquery, let's look at a non-correlated subquery. We will be using the same tables that we have used in the previous session of this video series. TBL products and TBL product sales. TBL products table contains the product data, and TBL product sales table contains sales related data. So every time we sell a product, and an entry will be made into this table. Now let's say I want to retrieve all the product that has not been sold at least once. How do I write that query? Obviously, whenever we make a sale, an entry is made into TBL product sales table. Now if you look at sample data that we have sold product with ID 2 and 3, meaning laptop and desktop. We have not sold TV at least once. So I want to retrieve the product that we have not sold at least once. So how do I do that? So select I want the ID, name and descriptions. We will write those columns later. First, let's write a from clause. So TBL products. Now I have written this from clause first because I will get an intelligence for the column's name. So it is easier to write type. So select ID, name and description. Okay, so we want these three columns from this table. From this table, we are where the ID column in TBL products in TBL products not in this table. Not in this table. Okay. Product ID not in this table. So what I will do basically, select product ID from TBL product sales. TBL product sales. And since there are duplicate product ID, I am going to use distinct keyword. I am going to use distinct keyword. Okay, this is the same query that we have discussed about in the previous video sessions. Now look at this. You know how does this query gets executed. Now the subquery gets executed first. So if you look at this query, this subquery can be executed independently. So when I execute that query, this query. So when I execute this query, I get what? I get 2 and 3. Now we are saying select ID name description. Now we are saying select ID name descriptions from TBL products where ID not in 2, and 3, 2, 3, which should give us the product with ID is equal to 1. Okay, this is an example of a non-correlated subquery. In a non-correlated subquery, the subquery is not dependent. Subquery is not dependent on the outer query. For its value. This subquery can be executed independently on its own. Okay, once the subquery is executed, the result of this subquery is then substitute with those parentheses for use by the outer query. Okay, so in a non-correlated subquery, subqueries usually gets executed only once. Okay, now let's look at an example of a non-correlated subquery. Again, we will be using the same example that we have discussed about in the previous session. Let's say, for example, I want to find out, all the product that we have sold and the total quantities. Okay. So basically we have 3 products. And I want to find out all the 3 products names and the total quantity that we have sold. So how do we do that? So basically I want the name. So basically I want the name and then the total quantity. Now to retrieve the total quantity, I want to use, let's say, a subquery. Okay, so I am going to open and close parenthesis. Select. Now we want to know the total quantity that we have sold. So I am going to use sum aggregate function. And sum of, I want to aggregate this quantity sold column. So quantity sold from TBL product sales table. TBL product sales table, quantity sold from TBL products sales table. Okay, where product ID is equal to, now for now let's substitute question mark. Question mark there, from TBL products table. So where is name column coming from? So where name column coming from? The name column is coming from TBL products table. Name column is coming from TBL product names, TBL products table. And I want to sum of this quantity sold for each product. So product ID is going to come from products, TBL products table. Product ID is coming from, is going to come from TBL products table. Okay, so every row that we select, product ID coming from TBL products. TBL products tables. Okay, so every row that we select from the outer query, so first TV select, let's say for example, then what is this subquery? Look at the subquery. That we have here, select sum of quantity sold from TBL product sales, where product ID is equal to, look at this, we are looking up the product ID in TBL products. We are looking up the product ID in in TBL products. In TBL products table. So every time we select a row, every time we select a row from the outer query, now this subquery gets executed. So when I select this row first, it then executes this subquery. When that row is being selected, okay, where product ID is equal to products dot ID. Here the ID is 1. It looks up that here we don't have an ID, so sum for TV will be null. So sum for TV will be null. And then when the query executes the second row, what happens? It comes to the subquery. Look up in TBL product sales table. If there is an entry, is there a product with ID 2? Is a product with ID 2? Yes, there is. It tries to sum of that. There is only one row. So we only get 7. And then finally it comes to 3. Okay, product ID is 3. So there are 3 rows. 1, 2, and 3. 3 rows. So it is going to add 5, 4, and 9. So 18 will be the sum. So if you look at this now, can I execute this subquery independently of the outer query? No, I can't. Look at this. When I try to execute this, I get an error. So let me execute this. So I get an error because the multi-part identifier TBL products .id cannot be bound. Now a correlated subquery will get executed for every row. For the outer query. In the outer query for every row, this subquery gets executed. Okay. So look at this. When I execute this query together, I get TV, laptop, and desktop. So let me execute this. I get TV, laptop, and desktop, and I get their sums as well. Okay. Now I don't have column name. Here. But let's go ahead and give a meaningful column name using alias. Let's say quantity sold. Now we get a column name. So let me execute this. Now we get the column name. Okay, so that is a correlated subquery because this subquery is because this subquery is dependent on this outer query for its value, for the value for this column product ID. Okay, so that is a correlated subquery. So if the subquery depends on the outer query, so if the subquery depends on the outer query for its value, then that subquery is called as correlated subquery. In the where clause, look at this. In the where clause of this subquery, this product ID, this product ID column gets its value from TBL products table, and TBL products table is not present within the subquery. Okay, it is present only within the outer query. So this subquery is dependent. So this subquery is dependent on the outer query for its value. In this case, for product ID, so here the subquery, so here the subquery is dependent on the outer query for its value, as the subquery is a correlated subquery. Correlated subqueries get executed once for every row that is selected by the outer query. Correlated subquery cannot be executed independently of the outer query. But whereas a non-correlated query, subquery can be executed independently of the outer query. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.